Every small town has its legends. Ours was about the hospital. It stood at the edge of the industrial district, a sprawling building of gray stone and shattered windows, strangled by ivy and rust. They said it had been abandoned for over 30 years, ever since a fire swept through the upper floors. But everyone knew the fire wasn't the real reason it closed. Kids whispered about the patients who never left, about doctors who performed surgeries that weren't in the books, and about the screams, always the screams. People swore that if you stood outside the gates after midnight, you'd hear them, not once, not random, but on a loop, a cry that repeated every 30 seconds, over and over, like someone reliving their last breath again and again. Most of us laughed at it, a spooky story to scare freshmen. But not Joe. Joe had that look in his eyes, the one that meant he was already planning something stupid. It was the start of summer vacation, and we were hungry for adventure. That's when Joe leaned across the table in Tommy's basement and said, "Let's go inside. Let's see if the screams are real." We laughed, pretended to brush it off, but deep down, I think we all knew the truth. The Forgotten Hospital wasn't just a story, and we were about to prove it. It was one of those muggy summer nights where the air feels thick, like the whole town is holding its breath. We were in Tommy's basement, me, Joe, Tommy, Michael, and Sarah. A single light bulb buzzed above us, flickering every so often, like even it was nervous about what we were about to say. Joe leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his grin wide and reckless. "One night in the hospital," he said. "That's all. We bring flashlights, record everything, prove once and for all it's just a stupid story." Tommy rolled his eyes. "Or prove it's haunted and get murdered by ghost doctors. Sounds fun." But he was smiling too. That was Tommy. He'd joke right up until the knife hit. Michael wasn't smiling. He tapped his fingers against the table, avoiding our eyes. He was the cautious one, the voice of reason. "People disappear in there," he muttered. "You've all heard it. My cousin swears she saw lights in the windows last year. Moving lights, like someone walking the halls." Sarah snorted, tossing her hair over one shoulder. "Or like drunk kids with flashlights." "Come on, Michael." She leaned in, eyes glinting. "Don't tell me you're scared." That was all it took. The word scared was a trigger. None of us wanted to be the coward, not in front of Sarah, not in front of each other. But then, thump. Something hit the basement window from outside. Hard. We all jumped, chairs scraping. The sound echoed too loud, too heavy for a stray branch. Tommy's face went pale as he crept to the tiny window, pulling aside the curtain. Nothing. Just the dark backyard. "See?" Joe grinned, though his laugh cracked at the edges. "The hospital's already calling us." No one laughed back. The silence stretched, sharp and uncomfortable, until Sarah finally broke it. "Fine, let's do it. Tomorrow night. Midnight." And just like that, the dare was set. We pretended it was about fun, about proving we weren't scared. But deep down, we all felt the same thing. The hospital wasn't just waiting. It was watching. The next night came faster than any of us wanted. Midnight. The air was damp and heavy, carrying that smell of rust and rain that always lingers near the industrial district. Our sneakers slapped against cracked pavement as we walked, the streetlights thinning out until there were none at all. The hospital waited at the end of the road, a hulking shadow against the sky, its broken windows gaping like open mouths. The gates were worse, iron, tall, choked with ivy. The metal was warped, twisted, as though something had pushed from the inside, trying to break free. The padlock that should have held them shut. Broken. It dangled uselessly, the chain rusted clean through. "Guess someone beat us to it," Tommy muttered, though his voice cracked halfway through. We stepped closer, flashlights flicking across the stone walls. That's when Sarah gasped. Scratched into the gate's surface, deep and jagged, were words, letters overlapping, carved by desperate hands. "Don't let it hear you." The silence after she read it was unbearable. No one laughed, not even Joe. A crow screeched overhead, sudden and sharp. We all jumped, but when we looked up, there was nothing on the branches, nothing at all. Behind us, the road stretched empty, quiet, too quiet. No cars, no wind, no sound except our own breathing. And maybe something else. A shuffle? The faint drag of a footstep on gravel. Michael swung his flashlight toward the noise. Nothing, just the empty street. But I swear, just before the beam hit, I saw a figure, thin, tall, pressed against the shadows of a tree. And the second the light touched it, it was gone. We turned back to the gates. They were open. The gates groaned as we stepped inside, the sound dragging through the night like rusted chains. The hospital loomed above us, massive and lifeless, yet somehow expectant. We crossed the cracked courtyard, weeds pushing through concrete, our flashlights jittering in our shaky hands. Every window was black, empty, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was peering back. The front doors were broken, one hanging crooked on its hinges. Joe pushed it aside with a loud scrape. The sound echoed through the building, a hollow metallic scream that made all of us freeze. Inside, the air was wrong, thick, heavy, too warm, too damp, like breathing through a wet cloth. We stepped into the first hallway. The beam of my flashlight cut through floating dust, revealing walls peeling with mold and old paint. The floor tiles were cracked, some missing, exposing black concrete beneath. Every step echoed too loudly, like the building itself was listening. Behind me, Sarah whispered, "Why does it smell like iron?" I caught it too, that coppery tang, sharp and metallic, like dried blood. My throat tightened. We moved further, our circle of light small and weak compared to the endless black ahead. Old stretchers lined the walls, their wheels rusted solid. On one of them lay a stuffed bear, its fur gray with age, one glass eye missing. It shouldn't have been there, not after 30 years. Then, a noise, a faint squeak, far down the hall. We all turned our flashlights at once. The beam caught an old wheelchair. It rocked forward just an inch, then stopped. No one spoke. No one breathed. And in that silence, the weight of the hallway pressed down on us, squeezing, suffocating, until I swear my lungs forgot how to work. This wasn't just a building. It was a throat. And we had just walked inside. The hallway narrowed as we walked, our footsteps echoing against tile walls. Somewhere above us, water dripped steadily, each drop a metronome marking the seconds we didn't want to spend here. We turned a corner and froze. Painted on the wall, beneath peeling layers, were drawings. Childish drawings. Sun, houses, stick figures holding hands. Except every face was wrong. Black circles for eyes, black holes for mouths. Sarah whispered, "This place had a children's wing." Her voice cracked. The ward doors were half open, one creaking softly as if it had been touched just seconds before. We pushed them wide. Rows of tiny beds stretched before us. Some were neatly made, sheets stiff with dust. Others looked as though their occupants had left in the middle of the night, blankets thrown aside, pillows on the floor. But it was the toys that made my stomach twist. A doll, her porcelain head cracked, one eye staring blankly. A line of wooden blocks spelling nonsense words, letters jumbled like screams cut into pieces. A rocking horse with a broken handle, positioned in the corner, facing the wall. The smell was worse here. Sweet, rotten, clinging to the air. "Why is that bear still clean?" Tommy's voice was barely audible. He pointed to the farthest bed. A stuffed teddy lay on the pillow, its fur bright and soft, untouched by time. Then it moved. Just a little, a twitch of its paw, as though something invisible had brushed against it. Sarah gasped and backed into me. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I forced it toward the bear. Nothing. It lay still, innocent. But then, from behind us, a faint sound, a giggle, high-pitched, childlike. We spun around, lights flashing across the beds. Empty, all empty. "Did you guys hear?" Michael started. The giggle came again, this time from inside the room. And all at once, the rocking horse began to sway. We backed out of the children's ward, our lights darting nervously across the walls, half expecting to see the rocking horse still swaying. But when I glanced back one last time, it hadn't stopped. It was swinging harder. Faster. "Don't look back," Joe muttered, pulling Sarah by the arm. His voice wasn't cocky anymore. It was tight, clipped, like a string pulled too far. We stumbled deeper into the hospital, the corridors twisting and splitting until it felt like we were walking in circles. The air grew heavier, thicker, pressing against our chests. That's when we heard it. A squeal of rusted metal. Long, piercing. The sound came from ahead, the intersection of two hallways. Our flashlights shook as we aimed them forward. And there it was, an old wheelchair. It sat in the middle of the hallway, its leather seat torn, one wheel bent inward. It hadn't been there before. We would have seen it. We froze, no one daring to move closer. Then, with an aching groan, the wheelchair rolled forward. Just a few inches. "Wind," Tommy whispered. But there was no wind. Not here. The chair shuddered again. This time it rolled toward us, squealing as the rusted wheels scraped against tile. Inch by inch, it gained speed, jerking forward, faster and faster until it barreled straight at us. We screamed, scattering. Michael tripped, his flashlight clattering to the ground, its beam spinning wildly across the walls. For a split second, it illuminated something else. A figure, tall, thin, standing just beyond the chair, half hidden in shadow, watching. And then it was gone. The wheelchair slammed into the wall behind us, tipping onto its side with a crash that echoed like thunder through the empty corridors. But the figure hadn't made a sound when it vanished. We followed the hallway deeper until the smell changed. It wasn't mold or rust anymore. It was paper. Dry, stale, like an attic that hadn't been opened in decades. A wooden sign hung crooked above the door. Medical records. The letters were faded, but still there. Joe pushed the door open. It groaned like a dying animal. Inside, rows of shelves stretched into the darkness. Metal cabinets, wooden drawers, piles of folders scattered across the floor. Some of them had spilled open, papers yellowed and curling. We stepped inside, our flashlights dancing across names typed in faded ink. Each folder was marked with one word, stamped in red, expired. Tommy picked one up, laughing nervously. "Guess that's hospital talk for dead." But the laughter died when Sarah opened a folder. There was no photo. Only a black smear, ink bleeding across the page, as though someone had tried to cover the face. She flipped to another file. Same thing. A name, a birth date, diagnosis. And where the photo should have been, only a smudge of darkness. Michael grabbed a stack, his hands shaking as he flipped through. Page after page, patient after patient. Every photo, gone. Or worse, replaced by something warped. Faces blurred, mouths too wide, eyes scratched out until the paper tore. And then we found the cabinet at the back. It was newer than the rest. Its folders weren't yellow. They were crisp, clean. Sarah opened one. Her hands froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I leaned closer, my stomach knotting. The name on the file wasn't unfamiliar. It was Joe's. Full name, birth date, school ID photo, a perfect, sharp picture. Except his eyes were black, not like ink, not like scratches, like holes. We all stared, waiting for Joe to laugh it off, to call it a prank. But he didn't. He just stood there, silent, pale, clutching his flashlight too tightly. Then behind us, the sound of a drawer sliding open. Slow, metallic. We turned, light sweeping across the room. One of the filing cabinets, moving by itself. Its drawer yawned wide, papers fluttering. Inside was another folder, this one with my name on it. We left the record room in silence. None of us spoke. What could we say? That the hospital had files on us, fresh and clean, as if it had been expecting us. The hall stretched ahead, black and endless. Our lights jittered across the walls, but it felt like the dark swallowed them whole. My ears strained for sound, any sound, just to remind me the world outside still existed. And then I heard it. A scream. It cut through the silence so sharply I nearly dropped my flashlight. High-pitched, raw, human. It echoed from deep within the building, twisting through the corridors until it felt like it came from everywhere at once. Sarah clamped her hands over her ears. Michael whispered, "It's just the pipes. It has to be the pipes." But then, 30 seconds later, it came again. The exact same scream, same pitch, same length. Perfectly repeated, like a recording stuck on a loop. We all froze, eyes wide, counting. 27, 28, 29. The scream tore through the air again. My skin crawled. It wasn't random. It wasn't an echo. It was programmed. Joe swallowed hard. It's someone trapped. Someone still in here, but none of us believed that. The scream wasn't alive. It didn't change. It didn't fade. It was a machine of pain, stuck in time, playing itself for eternity. Tommy tried to laugh. It came out broken. Maybe it's a speaker system or something. But then it happened. On the fourth repetition, the scream changed. Only slightly, but enough. This time, it screamed my name. The scream still echoed in our ears when we stumbled into the next hallway. The walls here were darker, stained with something brown and crusted that no one wanted to name. At the end of the corridor stood double doors, their glass windows smeared opaque. A faded sign above read, "Surgery." Joe pushed first. The hinges wailed, the sound scraping across our bones. The smell hit us before the sight. It wasn't just mold anymore, it was copper. Sharp, metallic, suffocating. The stench of blood that hadn't been fresh in decades, yet refused to fade. We raised our flashlights. The operating room spread before us. A single steel table stood in the center, its surface pitted and stained dark. Overhead, surgical lamps hung low, swinging ever so slightly as if stirred by a breath we couldn't feel. On the table lay tools, scalpels, forceps, saws, not rusted, not old, polished, clean, as if someone had laid them out for us. Michael gagged, turning away. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, whispering, "They shouldn't look new." Why do they look new? Then Tommy's light caught the floor, and we saw them, footprints, bare, human, leading from the table into the dark corner of the room. We followed the prints with our beams, and there it was. Hands. Pale, long-fingered, curling out from beneath the steel table. Just hands at first, then wrists, arms, pulling something larger into the light. A figure slid halfway out. Its body was wrong, twisted, the limbs bent at unnatural angles. A mask clung to its face, cracked glass lenses hiding whatever eyes lay behind. The mask was smeared with old, dried red. And then it spoke. Not with words, not with a voice. With the scream, The exact same scream from the hallway, bursting out of the mask, loud and endless, so close it rattled our teeth. Except this time, it wasn't repeating. It was alive. We ran. We didn't even agree on it. Our legs just carried us out of the surgery wing, away from the scream, away from the thing beneath the table. The hallway stretched on forever, our flashlights shaking across stained tiles. My chest burned, my ears still ringing. That scream, it wasn't just noise. It was inside me, still vibrating in my bones. We stopped only when we saw her. At the far end of the hallway, under the flickering remains of a ceiling light, stood a figure. Tall, slim, a nurse's uniform, pale blue, perfectly pressed, untouched by dust or decay. For a moment, relief washed over us. Someone, a survivor. "Miss," Sarah's voice cracked, but it was hopeful. "We're lost. Can you—" The nurse tilted her head. Slow, too slow. The light above flickered again, and I saw her face. Her skin was smooth, pale but wrong, like stretched wax. Her lips were drawn into a smile too wide, frozen in place. And her eyes, there were no eyes, just hollows, dark and endless, sucking in the light. We froze, then her head snapped. Not tilted, snapped. A violent jerk that cracked like breaking bones. Once to the left, once to the right, then back, too far, her chin nearly touching her spine. Tommy whispered, "Jesus Christ!" The nurse stepped forward. Her shoes didn't touch the ground. They hovered an inch above the tile, dragging soundlessly forward, her body swaying like a puppet pulled on invisible strings. And then she spoke. Not with words, not with her mouth. Her voice came from behind us. "You shouldn't be here." We spun around, nothing. When we turned back, she was gone. The hallway was empty, except the sound of rubber soles squeaked right behind my ear. We didn't plan to go down, but the hospital led us there. Every hallway bent toward it. Every stairwell seemed to collapse into the same direction. Down. The stairwell yawned open at the end of a narrow hall, a black mouth swallowing the beam of our flashlight's hole. The air pouring out was colder, thicker, carrying a stench that made my stomach churn. Damp concrete, mildew, and something sweet and rotten beneath it. Joe muttered, "It's just storage." Basements are always storage, but his voice shook. We descended. Each step groaned under our weight, the iron railings slick with condensation. The deeper we went, the louder it got, not noise, but silence. A silence so heavy it pressed into our skulls. The basement was worse than the hospital above. The walls here weren't tiled, but raw concrete, wet and sweating. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping black water that splashed against the floor like slow footsteps. And then we saw the cells, rows of iron-barred doors stretched into the dark, cages where no patient should ever have been. Each one was just big enough for a person to crouch inside. Scratched into the concrete walls were names, dozens of them. Some old and faded, others fresh, edges still sharp. Sarah raised her flashlight higher. Her breath caught. One of the names was hers. Sarah Miller. The letters dug deep, carved with violent desperation. We scrambled to check the others. There was mine, Tommy's, Michael's, even Joe's, every one of us. My knees nearly buckled. "This is impossible," Michael whispered. "We've never been here before." That's when a sound rolled through the basement. A low rattle. Metal dragging against concrete. We turned our lights down the row. One of the cell doors was sliding open. By itself. Inside, the dark wasn't empty. It was breathing. The cell door screeched open, the sound tearing through the basement like metal claws on bone. Our flashlights shook in trembling hands, beams jittering over damp walls. Something moved inside, not fast, not sudden. Slow, patient, A figure crawled out on all fours, its joints bent the wrong way, elbows jutting backward, knees twisting with wet cracks. It dragged itself into the corridor, head hanging low, long hair matted and black. We staggered back, pressing against the cold concrete wall. My light quivered over its body, and I realized it was wearing a hospital gown. Thin, stained. The thing lifted its head, and my heart froze. It was Joe. Or at least, it wore Joe's face. His features were all there, the nose, the mouth, the familiar jawline. But the eyes, empty pits, wet and glistening, as though something had scooped them out. His lips moved, twitching, as if he was trying to speak. "Help me." The voice was his, but it came out wrong, warped, doubled, as though someone else was speaking with him, through him. "Joe, what the hell?" Tommy's voice cracked, breaking into a sob. The figure twitched, then lurched forward, faster now, bones snapping with each step. Its mouth opened wide, far wider than human, splitting skin, tearing the corners of its face. From that mouth came the scream, the same one we had heard upstairs. But now it was close. Too close. The sound wasn't just in the room. It was in our skulls. Our bones vibrated, our teeth ached, our vision blurred. Sarah fell to her knees, clutching her ears, blood trickling between her fingers. Michael grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the stairs. "We have to go, now!" But when I looked back, the creature stopped crawling. It was standing. Tall. Too tall. Its head brushed the ceiling, its gown tearing, body stretching, skin splitting along the seams. It smiled with Joe's broken face and whispered, through the scream, "You came to visit me. Now you'll never leave." The lights went out, and the basement swallowed us whole. So tell me, if you found your own name carved into the walls of that basement, would you run, or would you realize it was already too late? Comment below, if you still can.